All right, and I'm back with demo day 6. So I'm going to tackle the roof today. So I start by, I got to take off the awning. So if you've never done that before, this is a super fun process. That's totally joking. So I started out by pulling out the awning. I have learned the hard way. It's a lot easier to work with it at ground level than it is to try to get up on a ladder and work with it. So right now I am pretty much taking there's a bolt on this side out that I have to take out. And I actually have it locked in place right now. And you see I've got vice grips on it. It's not going to go anywhere, but I have vice grips on there just in case. Next, I'll pretty much do the same thing on this side. The only difference is going to be I'm going to unwind this side. So I can lock that side, but this side is not locked. So I get my vice grips and I pretty much just take a handle of it and unwind it. I do actually count how many times I go around the awning. That way I know how many times to wind it back up when I end up putting the awning back on. So this side, I do the same thing. I actually flipped that little tab and unwound it pretty much the same amount just until there was no tension on it. And then after that, there's actually some rivets in this. I drill the rivets out, and it's pretty much just a matter of getting a drill bit and drilling a little bit bigger than whatever size rivet you think that is. And then the arm right there will actually slide out. As you see right there, that's pretty much the spring that keeps all the tension on it, so slide that out. After that, I can get the tube right here and it'll just slide right out of the awning like that. And I actually have a fence right there that it stops at, so I have to walk around the middle and kind of pull from the middle. Sorry about the angle right here, I kind of lost you, but you get the idea. Just slide the awning out until the tube comes out, and then you can just go ahead and set that aside. Now, because this awning is dry rotted, I'm not going to bother to slide it out of the track because I'm going to end up taking the track off anyway. So I am just cutting it right here at the top to get it out of the way. That is my lazy girl hack because it's all going to be replaced anyway, so it doesn't really matter, to be honest with you. All right, there's one more piece of the awning that's attached to this camper. So there's 2 bolts on the top, and I'll take these arms out. And then once that's out, I'm going to go ahead and start working on the roof. Now, when it comes to roof, I always start with the vents just because it seems like a good place to start to me. You can start wherever you want to, it doesn't matter. But I get I actually have a chisel right here that works really well to scrape the putty away so I can expose the screws. This one's actually a square head. Some of them are sometimes like a bolt head, but it really depends on the camper or the manufacturer. So this is just a close-up of me scraping that stuff away, and then I get my drill, and I can pretty much just take the screw out, and that's it. Now here's another lazy girl hack. Because I am replacing this roof anyway, I'm taking a box knife and cutting the roof membrane all around this vent right here, and then I'll just pull it up from the sides. There's no reason to be careful here because I'm replacing the roof anyway, so this is my attempt to save me a little bit of time. Plus it's super hot up on this roof. Now, I have to be really careful in this area because the wood is rotted, but basically I'm going to do the same thing. I actually didn't even have to take the screws out here because the wood is so rotten that I just used my box knife to cut around and the wood just came up with it because it was so rotten. Now we have a plumbing vent back here that I pretty much did the same thing. Scrape the sealant away, take the screws out, cut around it, and then the whole thing will come up. Same thing with this antenna that's right here. This antenna is actually broken off, so I'll end up replacing that with a new one, but same thing, just take the caulking off, the sealant screws up, and I actually ended up leaving this here because I didn't want that cord to fall back into the roof of the camper. Next up is the fridge vent. One of these didn't have sealant in that little hole right there, which it was supposed to, and the other ones did. So I took that out and then threw that on the ground. Same thing with this one, scraped the sealant up, and this one did not have nearly enough screws in it. For this entire thing, it's supposed to have probably at least 20 screws, and I think it had like 6. So I am really surprised that this wasn't leaking more than it actually was. I didn't think this part was leaking, but it definitely was once I took the membrane off, which you guys will see here in a little bit. But same thing. This one I actually forgot a screw there, which is why it came up a little bit harder than the other ones, but that's okay. It broke and it still came up anyway. Now here's another vent up front. Already took the screws out, and same thing, just take that vent right up. Makes life a lot easier. This is actually the antenna. Same thing with this. Scrape the sealant away, take the screws up, and then you can peel this back. And then I was like, why is this not coming up? I don't understand. And then I realized that I actually forgot to take the inside part to this off. So inside the camper, there's this little handle right there that you have to take off. This part's not necessary, but I'm going to end up taking all this stuff off anyway, so I figured I might as well while I was here. Usually use my drill, but it's on the roof, and I didn't feel like getting it, so this is where I'm at. While I'm in here, I figured I might as well take the AC off because I'm going to have to move that too. So I pretty much just took the screws off. This cover comes right off. There's actually two little holes right there that have a little cover. The cover snaps off and there's two screws underneath there. So I went ahead and took those off. And then after that, there's basically four main bolts that hold the AC on. Now these bolts were entirely too loose. This AC was actually leaking because these bolts were too loose. So these definitely need to be checked every year or so to make sure they haven't loosened. I should have went up and got my drill off the roof, but honestly, I was already here and whatever. You see me looking around. I have a backup drill and that's what I was looking for, but it was obviously not in the camper, so I'm just going to keep turning it with my hand. But once all four of those bolts are off, this whole face will pretty much just come off. And then there's actually a little electrical panel in there that will come with it. So this one has a connector, which is really nice. So I take the connector off right there and then up all the way inside. You stick your hand up in that big old hole right there. And that's the little thermostat that's plugged into the coils on the AC. So take that off and then it's freestanding. Okay, now for some more fun. So if you see, I took the screw cover. There's like a trim, a plastic trim piece. You'll take that off on these sidebars right here and then just start taking all of these screws out. So once you've got all the screws out, this is going to be a very important part. So this is that long metal piece that your awning was on. Now when you take this off, get a putty knife and kind of wiggle it from the top and push it down. What you don't want to do is bend this so you can't get it back because these bars are very expensive to replace, and if you don't have to replace them, then there's no need to. So just be careful when you take these off. It's okay to kind of peel it back a little bit. Just don't put too much force on it because you absolutely do not want to bend these because it's going to be a pain in the butt to get back in the right position when you go ahead and put this on after you've replaced your roof. So same thing with this side. Take the screw cover off, take the screws out. If you see right here, I've actually got a Sharpie, and on both sides I mark where that trim piece goes. That way when I go to put it back, I know exactly where it's supposed to go, because it could go forward more, it could go back more. So I really like to be sure that I get it in the exact spot that the manufacturer had it to begin with. So same thing, just get that putty knife and work it out. There's going to be butyl tape behind this, so it's going to be sticky, it's going to be hard to come off, but just kind of sit there and work at it, and then you'll eventually get it off. And I just put these on the ground underneath the camper until I'm ready to put it back on. All right, now I can take this antenna off now that I'm back on the roof. And I actually realized that when I took the antenna off, there is a coax cable that is supposed to be connected to this antenna, and it was not even connected. So there's no telling how long it's been like that. So next we'll move on to the front. Same thing, take that front strip off, sealant off, use the putty knife, and then if there's any screws left in there, go ahead and get those screws up because you want this to be kind of free floating on this front cap right here. I also took a couple screws on this round front side off because you'll need to get to the roof membrane that's under that. Same thing with the back, expose the sealant, take the screws off, and then take the back strip off right there. Now I know my AC is already loose, so I go ahead and pop that out of place, and this one actually has, looked like somebody homemade that, so I just took that off, and I'll just scoot that out the way. Now I know what's coming next, so I'm like chugging some water here because the hardest part is coming. I've been doing this for about 2 hours now at this point, and honestly it's super hot and I'm tired, so I'm just taking a break. So this is your reminder to drink lots of water and wear some sunscreen. Okay, here's probably the most satisfying part of the whole video, where the roof skin comes up. Now that all your trim pieces are up, you pretty much just start pulling it up. I actually have a box knife here where I cut this into separate pieces because it's really hard to try to take this off all in one piece. So I kind of cut it into whatever square pieces I feel like I can get off at one point, and then I just start ripping it up, put it into a ball, and then I throw it off the side of the roof. So I am being careful about that one corner right there. As you can see, my child is playing in the water. He popped in the corner. So anyway, just, yeah, cut it and keep moving on. Now, full disclosure, I know I make this look really easy, but go slow and take your time because this roof membrane is glued on there. It is very hard to get off. It will burn a lot of calories and it will make you very tired, especially if it is in the middle of, I guess it's not really summer, but it's freaking 80 degrees outside. So it's hot. So take your time, go slow. Don't want you to fall off the roof. So the back half of the camper is done. Now I'm moving to the front part of the camper. As you see, I'm just scoring it and just working my way up. I actually did put gloves on because the membrane was so hot. It wasn't the top part, it was the bottom part of the membrane. That black part was like burning my hands. It was so hot when I was taking it up. So I went ahead and put some gloves on. Highly suggest doing that just so you don't burn your hands. But it's funny because I've taken off so many of these membranes and they've never like burned my hands before. So I don't know what it was like exceptionally hot or what, but usually do this in the summertime. So I'm surprised I haven't burned my hands so far. So you'll pretty much just keep working section by section. That front part is a little tricky because the skin is actually tucked underneath that front cap, which is why it's so important to take that off, that front strip off that's on there. But if you have that off and everything is loose right there, the front membrane should just kind of come up from the front cap and you can take the whole thing. You don't have to like reach inside and cut all that stuff. Now, in all honesty, this probably only took me 10 minutes, but I feel like it was an eternity because I burned so many calories and I was so tired by the end. But you will end up taking, there's the seam tape that they have, which is pretty much glorified duct tape. So I take all of that stuff off too because I'll end up replacing all of that. As you can see, there's some nice water damage. And I kind of started digging into that today. I'll get into more of that tomorrow, but I just really wanted to see what I was dealing with. Now, I knew this corner right here was really bad where the bathroom was because that skylight had been leaking for so long. As you can see, I pretty much just pushed it in and it fell into the ground. So that's not a great sign, to be honest with you. But I'm just kind of working away to see where everything is. I came on the inside of the camper and started tearing off the ceiling inside just to see what kind of framing there was. And unfortunately, there's not a whole lot, which is really a bummer because I saw there was an aluminum frame around the fan and I was really hoping that everything was aluminum frame, but the whole thing just came out. So it's not. Anyway, that seems like a project for tomorrow and I'm tired and it's late. So I'm going to take a break and go to bed. So y'all keep watching if you're interested. Have a great night.